You meet someone for the first time. 3 seconds. That's all it takes for them to decide who you are. Not based on what you said, based on what you revealed. Your posture, eyes, voice, the energy you brought into that room. Most people walk into conversations hoping to be liked. They smile too fast, explain too much, fill every silence with noise because silence feels like failure, and they hand over control. Here's the thing. The first impression isn't about being remembered. It's about being underestimated or being feared. People who control the first impression control everything that follows. They don't try to impress, don't perform. They just show up as something you can't read. And that unsettles you. Today you'll learn the dark psychology behind first impressions. Not how to be liked, how to be impossible to forget, and difficult to control. There's this ancient principle from samurai strategy. It's called mei, the space between actions. Silence between words. Stillness before movement. In combat, the warrior who moved first often loses. Because movement reveals intention, and intention can be exploited. Same thing in social interaction. The person who speaks first, reacts first, fills the silence first, loses psychological ground. First impressions aren't won by what you do. They're won by what you withhold, what you refuse to reveal. The dark psychology here is simple. People trust what they can predict, and they fear what they can't read. When you walk into a room without needing validation, without rushing to explain yourself, without reacting to discomfort, you become a question they can't answer. And that question? It stays with them. Let me introduce you to someone. Daniel. He's intelligent, thoughtful, kind. But every time he meets someone new, he loses. Not because he says the wrong thing, because he says too much. He walks into rooms already apologizing for his presence. Smiles before anyone even acknowledges him. Talks to fill silence because silence makes him feel invisible. Someone asks a question, he over-explains. Someone challenges him, defends himself immediately. When the conversation ends, he replays it for hours, wondering if he said something wrong. Daniel's easy to read, easy to predict, easy to dismiss. And because of that, people don't respect him. They tolerate him. Daniel doesn't understand that first impressions aren't about being understood. They're about being felt. And what people feel from Daniel is desperation. The need to be accepted, the fear of rejection. That energy poisons every interaction before it even begins. Chapter 1. Eliminating the illusion of instant most people approach strangers like trust is the default. They open up immediately. Share, laugh, agree, because they think warmth creates connection. But warmth without boundaries? That creates weakness. Trust isn't given in the first 3 seconds. It's tested. And if you hand it over before it's earned, you've already lost. Here's the dark truth. People don't respect what's freely given. When you meet someone new, they're not looking for a friend. They're looking for a position in the hierarchy. Are you above them or below? A threat or a resource? Someone they can control or someone they need to respect? You answer these questions not with words, but with presence. The person who enters without needing approval, who observes before speaking, who keeps their expression, still places themselves above, not through arrogance, through calm. Daniel trusted too quickly. He assumed openness would be rewarded. But openness without mystery isn't attractive. It's invisible. Chapter 2. Eliminating the illusion of explanation. Here's what Daniel does wrong every single time. Someone asks him a simple question. What do you do? And he explains, in detail, justifies his job, qualifies his choices, adds context nobody asked for. Because he thinks more information creates more respect. Opposite is true. The more you explain, the more you reveal your need to be understood. And need is weakness. People who control first impressions don't explain. They state, I work in strategy. That's it. No justification, No backstory, no apology. If the other person wants more, they'll ask. And when they ask, you decide what to give. Not because you're withholding, because you understand that power lives in the space between question and answer. Silence isn't awkward. It's a test. Most people fail it by filling the gap too quickly. Daniel filled every gap. And by doing that, he told everyone exactly how to treat him. Like someone who needed their approval. Chapter 3. Eliminating the illusion of emotional reaction. Daniel meets someone who challenges him. A joke at his expense. Subtle insult. Dismissive tone. And he reacts. Defends himself, explains, laughs nervously. Because he thinks reacting will resolve the tension. But reaction is submission. The moment you react emotionally, you've confirmed the other person has control. They pressed a button, and you responded. Now they know where your buttons are, and they'll press them again. This is the behavioral pattern manipulators use in the first 10 seconds. They test you. Not with obvious attacks, but small provocations. A comment that could be a joke or an insult. A question that sounds innocent, but feels invasive. A silence that pressures you to speak. React, you lose. Defend, you lose. Explain, you lose. People who control first impressions don't react. They observe. They pause. They respond only when they choose to. And often they don't respond at all. Because the most powerful response to a test is no response. It tells the other person, you don't have access to me. Chapter 4. Eliminating the illusion of closure. Here's something most people don't get. Not every conversation needs to be resolved. Not every question needs an answer. Not every silence needs to be filled. Daniel believed every interaction needed closure. Someone asked him a question, had to answer it fully. Someone made a comment, had to acknowledge it. Conversation felt unfinished, had to fix it. But closure is a trap. It keeps you stuck in conversations that don't serve you. Forces you to explain, defend, justify long after the moment's passed. People who control first impressions know this. You don't owe anyone closure. You can end a conversation whenever you choose. Leave a question unanswered. Let the silence sit, and the discomfort that creates, not your responsibility. It's theirs. Daniel stayed in conversations too long because he feared being rude. But staying too long isn't politeness, it's weakness. The most respected people leave first. Chapter 5. Eliminating the illusion of approval. This is the root of everything. Daniel entered every interaction seeking approval. He wanted people to like him, validate him, confirm he was enough. And because of that, he was never enough. The need for approval radiates from your body like a signal. Changes your posture, your tone, your eye contact. Makes you smaller. The dark psychology of first impressions is built on one truth. People don't respect those who need their approval. They respect those who don't. The person who walks into a room without needing anything from anyone, attention, validation, acceptance, immediately stands above. Not because they're arrogant, but because they're complete. They don't perform, don't explain. They simply exist, and that existence is threatening, because it can't be controlled. So what happens when Daniel stops explaining, stops reacting, stops seeking approval, stops filling silence? He becomes someone else, someone unreadable. He walks into a room and people notice not because he's loud, but because he's still. Someone asks him a question and he pauses before answering. Not because he doesn't know the answer, but because he chooses when to give it. Someone tests him with a comment and he doesn't react, holds their gaze, lets the silence sit. And they realize this person can't be moved. The first impression is no longer about being liked. It's about being felt. And what people feel is, I can't predict him, can't control him, need to respect him. Here's how you reconstruct the first impression. 1. Silence as default in speak until you have something worth saying. Most people talk to fill space. You won't. 2. Delayed responses. Someone asks you a question. Pause. Count to 2 before you answer. Signals you're choosing your words, not reacting. 3. Emotional neutrality. Then let your face reveal what you feel. Not coldness, calm. 4. Fixed boundaries. Decide in advance what you will and won't discuss. Don't let the conversation pull you into territory you didn't choose. 5. Observing before speaking. Watch the room before you enter it. Notice who dominates, who submits, who's pretending, then decide where you fit. 6. Ending conversations first. The person who leaves first controls the interaction. Don't linger. 7. Psychological detachment. Invest emotionally in how people perceive you. Observe their reactions without needing to change them. 8. Pre-decided reactions. Before you enter the room, decide how you'll respond to common provocations. Insults, tests, awkward silence. Don't let the moment decide for you. 9. Consistency without gaps. If you're calm once and reactive the next time, you lose credibility. Consistency is the foundation of psychological dominance. Neuroscience confirms what ancient strategists already knew. The human brain makes judgments about trustworthiness, competence, dominance within 100 milliseconds of seeing a face. This is called thin slicing, and it's based on microexpressions, posture, vocal tone, not words. Behavioral psychology shows people assign higher status to those who speak less, move slower, hold eye contact longer, because these behaviors signal certainty. And certainty is power. Cognitive bias research reveals people trust what they can predict and fear what they can't. This is the ambiguity effect. When you withhold information, don't explain, remain unreadable, you create psychological tension. And that tension makes you memorable. You're no longer the person who enters hoping to be liked. You're the person who enters and makes others wonder. You don't react, you observe. Don't explain, you state. Don't fill silence, you let it work for you. The first impression is no longer a performance. It's a declaration. I don't need you to understand me. Don't need you to like me. I exist independently of your perception. And that independence is the most dangerous thing you can carry into a room. If this resonates with you, subscribe. Not because you enjoyed the content, but because you recognize you're building something most people will never have. Psychological independence. Comment below with one word. Aware, not as a gesture, as a declaration. That you see the game being played, and you won't lose it anymore. The first impression isn't the beginning of a relationship. It's the establishment of a hierarchy. And once you understand that, you can never unsee it. Every conversation becomes a chess match. Every silence becomes a weapon. Every reaction, or lack of it, becomes a choice. You can't go back to being the person who needed approval, because now you know what that cost you, and you won't pay it again. The room is waiting. Enter it like you've already won.